Team Original Gravity is a team of engineering students working to become the first people to brew beer on the moon. TeamIndus is a privately funded Indian space team, and they are amongst the top 5 in the Google Lunar XPRIZE competition. And Team Original Gravity is competing for the final spot in their spacecraft. So this is our canister, and hopefully when and if we win, TeamIndus will help us make it space ready. It will then enter inside the rocket, and once it makes a soft landing on the moon, we will then be able to brew beer on the moon. So here is our canister vessel, which will be the defining factor for us to brew beer on the moon. It has 3 tiers, 3 chambers. The top will be where all the electronics are to make sure that everything works and our valve opens up and our pressure sensors. The second will have the wort, which is basically sugar water. And then that will then drop inside to the 3rd chamber where the yeast will be. The yeast will then consume the sugars and produce ethanol and CO2.
The valve is just going to get a command and should open just like that. The wort should then mix with the yeast, and the yeast will eat all the sugar in the wort. When the yeast does that, it'll produce alcohol and carbon dioxide will cause an increase in pressure in the vessel, and that pressure increase can be detected by a pressure transducer.
Right now, we are testing the material that we are using for the experiment. We've already kind of done this same exact test in the bottles like a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. And that was just putting beer that's been unfermented inside of this and then putting the yeast in and then capping it. And in our bottles, we didn't get any explosive, pressures. We got pretty good pressure. We drank it, it tasted carbonated, so it was, perfectly modeled the way that we expected it to. And so now we're just kind of testing the same exact setup, but in here, the wort will be in the top chamber and the yeast will be in the bottom chamber. And at the flip of a switch, the wort will drop straight down into the yeast and hopefully beer will be made at that point. On the moon, there's a little bit of gravity, but there's going to be a lot less than on Earth, so we predict that it will probably react faster. Hopefully, over the course of 3 to 5, maybe even 10 days, the beer will ferment and we'll be able to get pressure data from this pressure transducer. And we'll be able to log it and then eventually send it back down to us here on Earth.
What happened was we were all discussing ideas, punching around different ideas, picking each other's brain, and we happen to really enjoy the craft of brewing. Brewing has become a culture and science in its own right. There is a science behind it. Now, because we all love brewing, we started making a joke out of it almost, like, oh, maybe we should brew beer on the moon. And we started laughing, and then a few of us kind of went silent and then realized, wait a minute, we could actually make this possible. We could actually think about this. Well, yeast is a prime ingredient in this whole process. So if we focus on yeast, we can understand how it behaves, and because of its major essential components in all of our everyday necessities, this could be a big breakthrough for applications far beyond brewing.
And just shipping beer up doesn't really say anything. It's just kind of like, hey, we send something up to the moon. It's not that interesting. If we sent yeast up to the moon and we let it, make beer on the moon, that's totally different. We're going into, biological processes, control systems, all this stuff that's, totally just way cooler than just sending up beer. And no one's ever done it before. So that was, all these different things factored into us picking this topic for our project.